Hi, welcome to the Coffee with Lisa podcast. I believe that everyone in business has missing structures and endless possibilities to create new opportunities. The challenge is most don't know how to leverage the relationships for a win-win. I believe that your relationships will make the difference in the results you'll achieve, the impact you will have, and the speed in which you will make opportunities happen. I believe that you can see things through, but you often struggle to see through things. I'll make the invisible visible, the complex simple. Because of these beliefs, I created the Coffee with Lisa podcast and have invited the best experts to join me and share their experiences and knowledge with you so you can move faster and gain a competitive advantage in life and in business. If you're tuning in to the Coffee with Lisa, this is where I share extraordinary stories about extraordinary people. And my goal really is for you to walk away with one golden nugget that you can apply to your business or to your career, or perhaps just to your personal life. So I wanted to thank you. Welcome to the Coffee with Lisa podcast. And today I have a really special guest. I have Dr. Peter Legge. And Dr. Peter Legge is the chairman of Canada-wide Media. And I'm going to bring him on in. Welcome, Peter.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm very good. Thank you for joining me today. Peter, despite your accolades and you're a professional speaker, Hall of Fame recognized, you've wrote an abundance of books that we're going to talk about in shortly, but you really are an activist in your community and you really believe in volunteer, and you've won more awards than I even begin to imagine. So first, before we start the show, I really wanted to just thank you and honor your commitment to volunteerism and to the millions of dollars that you've created and donated in the wake of a community. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. It's been my pleasure and privilege to do that.
Thank you. So off the air, folks, we were talking a little bit about how Peter and I first met and the years that I followed Peter's career. And so, we share some really special people. And one of those people is Patricia Fripp. And for those of you who are tuning in who don't know who Patricia is, she's a Hall of Fame professional speak coach. And she's, had a profound impact on my life as well as Peter's. So it's amazing how an opportunity to connect in a brief encounter can always lead to new and more passionate things. And it's all about pivoting, isn't it, Peter? And all about really adapting in times of change and, reaching out to those people when you need them most.
Yeah, Frippy is, we're both members of an organization called Speakers Roundtable.
Yeah.
There is 20 speakers in North America. And I think there might be one other Canadian or another Canadian coming in, but that's where I really first got to know her beyond CAPS.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
We go to this convention once a year, just the 20 of us and our wives and what have you. And she is absolutely electric. She is so precise. She is so fastidious in what she does and how she does what she does. Every time I even talk to her, even on the phone, I'm learning something about how I can get better.
Absolutely. I always say that Fripp is the parrot on my shoulder, and she's always cuffing me across the head because I'm saying the word stuff or things.
Yes.
Or yes. I've learned over the years, don't say those words. Be very specific. The old Frippism, specificity builds credibility. So, Peter, you just read, I've read this book, The Power of Today.
Yeah.
And you've just launched a new book. And the number, you talk about 10 traits that defines influence and how people can use those traits to adapt and pivot, especially in times of crisis. And we're in the COVID right now. And I don't really want to get into COVID, but I would like to talk more about that one specific trait that you believe people really need to know more about and how that will help them right now in this time.
I think the most important thing when you're meeting someone new or someone that you really haven't done any business with, it's just an acquaintance, that somewhere in the conversation, beyond the introductions of who you are and how did we meet and what have you, is you need to say to them as sincerely as possible tell me exactly what it is that you do and how you do what you do. And that instantly gets them talking about themselves, their business, their pitfalls, what works, what doesn't work. And people always want to talk about what they're doing. And so that's how I probably begin a conversation with almost everybody once we get past the who are you. So that's what I do, and it seems to work because people like talking about themselves.
Well, if there's one thing I learned when I first entered the world of public speaking and working with speakers and influencers is people do like to talk about themselves a lot.
They do.
And so if you figure out the way to take advantage of that, it can help you lead a team, especially during crisis. And if you make it really about them and more, make that more intelligent, emotional conversation and connection with them, you will be able to pivot and adapt.
Yeah, if I this is the first time we really met you, although you say we met at a CAPS convention in Edmonton a number of years ago when Frippy was there. But if I were first to meet you when I get through your good looks and your blonde hair and your effervescence and your personality, someone say, tell me what is it you do, Lisa? What do you do for a living? And then you tell me, well, how do you do that? How do you go? Let's say you had the podcast a couple of years ago when we first met. How do you do that? How do you line up those guests? How do you prepare for that? And so you tell me all about what you're doing. Yeah. And that works. Whatever. And if you're in sales, that has to be number one. What are you trying to do with your business?
Yeah.
How do you promote your business? What do you use? What's important to you? What has brought you to the pinnacle of success that you're in today? Again, take it back to you. It's not about me. It's about you.
And so, Peter, how do you take that methodology and that thought process and apply it as a leader? Because, I mean, you lead big teams currently right now with Canada-wide Media and the chairman of the board. How do you take that methodology with your team? Because that looks different than a sales conversation or when you're meeting somebody or you're networking.
Well, the majority of my time is spent with the marketing salespeople here. All the writers and the art directors, they have a different skill set that I don't really muck about with, other than when I see the finished product. If I see the finished product and it's not working, I instead of blasting them, I say, how did you decide on this cover? What led you to put that person or that item or that building or whatever on the cover? What caused that to happen? Because it might shape my view of whether I like it or not once you've told me how you've done that. So if it's sales, number one is we're all selling something. You're selling, like, I'm not paying you, you're not paying me, but you convinced me that I needed to be on your podcast. Because tenacity, we tried to do this last week. I couldn't do it because I was trying to do it at home, and I'm not very good at this. So we worked it today. But how do you do that? How do you decide on who you're going to interview and what the questions are? And are you as patient as you have been with me to get me on camera? How do you do that?
Yeah. Well, and I think, it comes down to my belief system, first of all, and you talked a little bit about explaining to people what you do and how you do it so you can solve their problems and you make it about them. And there's a lot of conversations that happen about the why behind, the Simon Sinek says, once you figure out the why, you can do anything. But I actually don't really believe that necessarily. I believe that a why is the deciding factor for me on why I get up every single morning, why I do what I do. But my buyers and my, the people around me and my team, they don't care why. They care about how and what I'm going to do and what problems I'm going to solve for them. And so it's interesting that you asked that, because do you believe that why is the motivator and the how and the what is really what people want to know more about, and that's how you shape those conversations?
Yeah, well, let's assume we've never met. Let's assume I don't know what you do, but somehow we're lunch together. somewhere in the first 5 or 6 minutes, I would say, tell me what you do for a living. And you tell me, well, how did you get into that business? What are your skill sets? What kind of education? Did it just happen by chance? And you tell, in the first 15 to 20 minutes, I'd know a lot about you to decide whether I could help you or whether we could do business together.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And so the book that we're talking about with these specific traits is a new book that you've just launched, correct?
The Under the Influence.
Yes, and I'm just going to bring that up here let's go here. Where is it? Right here, Under the Influence.
Yeah.
And so that's the number one trait, is we're talking about why do you do, how do you do, what do you do? What's the second most important trait in that book, Peter?
Well, the book started out, the working title of the book was, What's Your Story?
Oh, I like that.
It's full of stories, because your stories, the things that you've done, what you've been able to accomplish in your life in Edmonton or elsewhere in the world, has shaped who you've become. So then I thought, well, I'll write a bunch of my stories that I've done and what I learned and my failures and successes and what have you. And then I thought, well, no, actually, those things that I've done have influenced me. So I'm going to change the name of the book to Influence. And then it was The Power of Influence. And then I came up with the idea, no, it should be called Under the Influence, because you are under the influence of the people that you meet, those people that you associate with, those successes and failures that you have had, we've all had. How have they shaped who you've become? You didn't start out being this positive doing a podcast. It was trial and error. Now you're an expert at it. So how did you do that?
Very good.
Under the influence. So the book is really a series of stories of things that I've been able to accomplish, a lot of them failures.
Yeah.
We learn from our failures. How have those failures helped me on my path to wherever I'm going?
Yeah. So Peter, so everybody has failures. You're right. I've had failures. I'm going to have a bunch more failures, and I'm okay with that, because I really believe that in a time of failure is where we learn an enormous amount, and we'll learn more in a time of failure than we will in a time of success. I really genuinely believe that. So if you were to say, what was your greatest personal challenge? How do you overcome that? But more importantly, how do you apply what you learned each and every day moving forward?
Well, my biggest failure was not my wife. That was my biggest success.
Kay is amazing, so I don't think
she is. And I met her when I was an entertainer on a cruise ship. And there was no idea that I was ever going to meet anybody. That wasn't what I was in the business for. But on the first night out of this ship, of this Vancouver to England cruise, where I was doing entertaining as a comedian, I was told to go to the tourist lounge and buy some drinks every night and get to know some of the passengers and what have you. And sitting in this group of about 6 or 7 people, right opposite me was Kay. Now, the last thing I wanted was looking for a relationship, but somehow I fell instantly in love with her and pursued her until she said, yes, I would marry you. So that's my biggest success. And she has been critical to me, and we've been married for over 52 years. And I'm crazy about it today, differently, but I'm crazy about it today and tell her how much I love her every single day. Every single day, I tell her how valuable she is. Now, my biggest failure, I was working as the general sales manager of a radio station in Langley, just outside of Vancouver, CJJC. And the owner of the station was a broadcast person, but he didn't know a lot about sales. And so he hired me to be the general sales manager. And so for 3 or 4 years, we did what I thought was a pretty good job. But I could tell that our relationship was not as great as it could be. And on a Thursday afternoon at about 3 o'clock, and we remember these times, why I don't know, but there was a memo went out to the radio station that simply said, Peter Legge will no longer be working for this radio station, but it will be business as usual. It might be business as usual for the radio station, but it certainly wasn't business as usual for me. Radio station was in Langley. We lived in Coquitlam, a 45-minute drive. And it was before cell phones, so there was no way of getting a hold of Kay. I drove as slowly as I could from the radio station to my house in Coquitlam because I had to confront my wife with the fact that her husband had been fired. So I pulled the car into the driveway, and she said, good day today? I said, well, it was different. Let me change. Let's have a glass of wine, and I'll tell you about the day. So I did that. Again, I took as long as possible, got the wine, sat in the front room, and she said, she knew there was something up. She said, well, what's up? What's going on? And I said to her, I got fired today. Complete silence. Not a word. Was she going to leave me? Was she going to divorce me? Was she going to hit me? Was she going to kick me out of the house? What was she going to do? But it took her 5 minutes before she said anything. And then she said to me, you got fired today. That's good. That's good. You shouldn't be working for somebody else. You're the best salesman I've ever seen in my life. You work hard, you're diligent, you're honest, you're caring. What I want you to do tomorrow is tomorrow morning, I want you to shave, shower, put on a clean suit and a tie, and go out there and find a business that you can own and you run it yourself. That's what she said, and kissed me and said, I love you. Wow. Wow is right. So the next day I went out and I heard about this guy named Al Davidson, who was a sportscaster for CKNW. You may even know Al or knew of him. And he had a magazine called Al Davidson This Week. The week before I got fired, he was declaring bankruptcy. And so I asked him, I said, Al, why don't you and I have coffee, lunch? And we did. And at that lunch, I ended up buying his magazine for $76,000. I didn't have 76 cents, but he didn't have to declare bankruptcy, and I would do it over time. He had printed next week's publication, which was good because it was called Al Davidson This Week. The week after that, I changed the name of the magazine to TV Week magazine, and that's how we started 47 years ago.
Wow.
Out of bankruptcy. It was my company, inspired by my wife. And we still have that magazine today. And today, because of this pandemic, it is our #1 magazine today.
Really? Wow. I was going to ask you how business is working with the pandemic.
Yeah.
Good.
It's well, some of the publications we've delayed till end of May, but they're not monthlies anyway. But
yeah.
TV Week is every single week. Every single Tuesday, there's a new edition. So advertisers are there because it's going into the home. 99% of our circulation is paid for. It goes into the home, and we're the only magazine in Greater Vancouver that's doing that.
Yeah, yeah.
Very profitable magazine.
Well, and I do believe in today's day, magazines and the art of an actual book and a newspaper is getting lost. I mean, thank you cards for people. When's the last time that you actually went to the mailbox and got a thank you card or a letter from somebody, a handwritten note? So, I think that there's a time and a place, and I'm hoping what will happen is that COVID will reignite some of that passion of some of those methods of communication that are starting to become a lost form of art.
Yes, I agree with you. I think I try and do at least 5 to 10 thank you somethings a day.
Yeah.
Not always successful, but somebody's going to get a little card from me saying, I really appreciate our time together, Lisa.
Yeah.
Hope we got a good audience. Hope it was good for you, something like that. You've got both my books, so I won't send you a book, but I would normally send you a book. But I'll send you something. Do that every day. Every day.
Yeah.
Every day. Year in, year out. It's amazing how your reputation will grow. And I've sent you something 3 years ago and we haven't met, but I meet you in Edmonton next week and you say, you sent me a note. I really appreciate it.
Well, and it's not something that everybody practices. The first time I ever really understood the power of a thank you note was when I read a book by Tom Hopkins, and I know Tom really well. And he talks very much about the He built a whole real estate business on the power of a thank you. So it's an extremely powerful to use, and it's just good business, and it's good people business. It's not about profitable business. It's about the people business.
It's people skills. We're all about people skills. If we develop our people skills and our ability to connect with people, and we do that every day, every year, for 25, 35, 40 years, it's amazing the base of people across this great country, which I love, Canada. I wasn't born here, but I'm Canadian, that I can go into Halifax and say, you sent me a book 4 years ago, I still got it.
Yeah.
I'm at a Shoppers Drug Convention. You sent me a book 4 years ago. I read it. I love it. Can we have a chat, coffee after your presentation? Absolutely. Yeah. I'd forgotten all about it.
So in this book, Peter, I'm going to change things a little bit. You talk about the triple filter test. Can you explain to us what is the triple filter test?
Well, the number one filter test is tenacity. You've got to hang in there. You've got to be willing to make contact with somebody, but it might take some time for you to do business with that person. So you've got to find what their sweet spots are. You've got to find how you can help them. What can I do for you? Can I send you another book? Can I send you a chapter of a book? Can I speak for you? Can I introduce you to somebody? What can I do to help you and move you forward? Zig Ziglar said it better than anyone. You can have everything you want in life if you help enough other people get what they want in life. Let me repeat that. You can have anything you want in life if you help enough other people get what they want in life. So how can I help you get what you want in life? And as a result of doing that, and if you do that for enough people over a long period of time, it's absolutely jaw-dropping what you will do and how you will impact your life as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think, it comes back to that's how you really in today's day adapt and pivot in crisis. It's by asking those questions about other people. What can I do to help you? What can I help to do to move you? What can I help to better your position or better your people? It might not necessarily be, especially if it's a leader, it might not necessarily be about them personally. It might be about their people. They're trying to keep people employed and the payroll over the next 6 to 8 to 9 weeks, and we don't really know what's going to happen. What our government is going to do, or what the government on the other side of the border is going to do. Yeah. And so it's very important.
What we're going for now is probably for everyone that's alive on the planet is a first time experience. So we're going through something we've never gone through really before. I've never had a lockdown at my company before. I've never been at home for 2 weeks, not allowed to go out. It's just staggering.
Yeah.
I should say that I did an interview recently where someone said, "How did this all begin for you?" And I was born in England, and my mother and I took my father was living in New Westminster in British Columbia, and my mother and I took a ship from Southampton to New York. Couple of days in New York, and then we took a Greyhound bus from New York to Chicago, across the prairies to Seattle. And our last port of call was Seattle at the Greyhound bus depot. Yep. And I didn't know that my mother was flat broke. And I'm a 12-year-old kid who was hungry and sitting at the counter having a glass of water. And the woman sitting next to my mother somehow sensed that she had no money to buy her son a lunch. She gave her a $5 bill and then disappeared. I have no idea who she was. She's probably passed away. She probably has a lot of friends that she's affected. What that said to me as a 12-year-old boy, it's good to be kind to strangers. And everyone that we have never met is a stranger. So how do you be kind to those strangers and get them? You ask them questions, you talk to them, what struggles are you going through? She knew that my mother was going through a struggle. That little story has stuck with me for 50 years.
Yeah, profound impact.
Be kind to strangers.
Yeah, and that brings me back to the story of Patricia Fripp. When I first met Fripp, it was really, I was a private investigator at the time, and I was asked by a colleague of mine who was a retired RCMP officer who did a lot of public speaking in the corporate sector about security and safety, said to me, we're bringing this amazing lady into town with CAPS organization, and it's exclusive, you can only be invited, and you should come to this event. And I'm like thinking, what am I going to go to a public speaking event for? I'm a private investigator. I'm trying to hide in the weeds, not stand out in the crowd. And so I went to the event, and Fripp walked in, and talk about, you talked about a force, and she is a force to be reckoned with. And she walked into that room in all her glory, and she talked to me. There was probably 50, 75 people in the room, but as far as I was concerned, she was so good. She talked to me that entire time. And when I walked out of there, talking about a person of influence and the ability to tell a story and the ability to never ask me a question, but really tailor her whole presentation around me and as the audience member, was profound. It had an impact, for where we do business together now. But at the time, I never imagined how profound somebody of influence could have such an impact on me.
Yes. You knew she was a hairstylist.
I did know she was a hairstylist.
She came from England to San Francisco.
Yeah.
And she would cut men's hairs and style women's hair. And she would ask them specific questions. And then she'd go and write down what their answers were. And that's how she developed some of her expertise, content, because she'd ask questions. And when you're in a barber chair or getting your hair done for like 45 or 50 minutes, you're happy to chat.
Yeah. Well, and all they want to do is talk anyways, because aren't you a therapist when you're a hairdresser? Isn't that part of the role?
Yeah.
But the thing that really, we talked about kindness and how much that can have an impact, and it can pay tenfold more than any amount of money transfer can ever happen. And, Fripp was extremely kind to me in my earlier years of, and she still is, but in my earlier career. And that kindness is really what helped me, build tenacity and build courage and confidence and so forth. And so I think people really need to understand, and I thank you for writing the book about how influence can really impact your life, and you can really move forward and be kind to others and be influential to others and not necessarily be an influencer.
But everyone that listens to your broadcast could write their own book under the influence, because if they go back to square one, or day one, all those people that had a profound impact on your career and caused you to be the kind of person you are, as successful as you are, that's people that have influenced you over the years. And if you've taken their advice, which you probably have, if you've taken Fripp's advice, you've taken one of the best person's advice, who was a legend in the speaking business around the world, not just in Canada or the United States, but around the world. So that's one of the ways to do that, is to write your own book or write your own stories. Even if you don't print a book, just write the stories about the people that have influenced you. That will become stories that you tell in your speaking engagements.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And is there you've written so many books, Peter, so you must have a method to the madness, a system or a process that you can share with us about how you structure your books. Is there, a quick cheat sheet that you could guide us on how that works? Yeah,
it's a cheat sheet. I don't like that. The skill set. Well, let's take under the influence. It started out with, what's your story? How did I come up with that? Well, if you hear me speak at all, and I probably speak about 30 or 40 times a year, most of it is stories. Illustrations, things that I've been a part of, because people love stories, because it's got a beginning and a middle and an end. And so I thought, okay, what kind of stories have influenced me? What's your story? That's how I began. So I started by putting together some of my stories. How did I meet my wife?
Yep.
That's in the book. How did I get fired? That's in the book. How did I start this company with a 10-cent magazine? People say, you started a multi-million-dollar company with a 10-cent magazine getting fired? Read the story. Yes. So that's how I put that together. So then it got better and better. How did I get a BBC television show in England in the 60s? Part of it was sales. Part of it was because I needed a job. And so what I did, I'll tell you the story. What I actually did was I knew that there was BBC and ITV. There's just the two radio stations in those days. And so I got about, I tried to get a hold of the producers at BBC. They didn't want to know me. I tried to get a hold of the producers at ITV. They didn't want to know me. So I thought, well, maybe I better put together my own television show. So I wrote a half-hour television show, and living next door to my wife and I was a television producer at a private studio in England. I asked him if he would talk to his boss. Would his boss give me a half hour on a Friday, the crew, the lighting, the sound guys, and some music, and I would write my own half-hour television show because I had no money. Anyway, he convinced his boss to do that. But the boss said to him, he's got exactly 25 minutes. He goes on at 25 to 5. At 5 o'clock, we pull the plugs, the lights go out, we send the staff home. He's got to do it in 25 minutes. So I wrote this show, and it was called Don't Ask Us, We're New Here, because I was looking at television shows, and all they were having were the old guys from the last 5 or 10 years.
Yeah.
So after we got the recording, we went to a pub in Putney in England. And Kay said, now you've got this show, what are you going to do with it? I didn't get that far. So I got the 3 producers at BBC, the 3 producers at ITV, and I did my own demonstration in downtown London. They only came because what idiot would write his own show without us? So I played it for them, and they thought, this is very good. We exchanged business cards. There was one guy, the name of John Ammons, who was the last producer to go. And we were downtown London, and his offices were in Shepherd's Bush, and he said, ride with me in my cab. It's a good 45 to 50-minute ride. In that 45 or 50-minute ride, we cut the deal for the television show. 2 years, 9 episodes a year. We had 7 million people a week watching it. It was called Don't Ask Us, We're New Here. That's how I got on BBC TV. I had to make the sale.
Yeah. Well, and I think what people need to understand is that we are all in sales. Everyone. It doesn't matter if you are sitting in the C-suite, you're a manager, you're a waiter, you're a waitress, you're a hairdresser. We are all selling ourselves.
Exactly. Now, I've never, you say I've met you, but I don't recall meeting you, but I should have.
That's okay.
But you made a couple of calls to me to get me to do this podcast with you. And we try to do it from my home, but I'm not nearly as, my skill set is not doing that. So that got delayed. Now we're in my office, and I've got my assistant here to make sure that we're connected properly. So you're in sales.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think especially young people this way. I'm going to try to here. I'm getting some feedback. Do you get that feedback on your side, Peter?
A little bit, yeah. You sound like you're not live, but I know you are.
Is that better?
Yeah, much better.
Yeah. Okay. So
here's the best sales skill I've ever known, right? Now let's assume I'm not married. And let's assume I've just met you. And I say to you, Lisa, will you marry me? And your answer is no. Then I say, can you help me understand why? And you say something like, I don't love you. I say, if you love me, would you marry me? Probably 9 times out of 10, you'd say yes. Now, what I got to get to do is divorce my wife, have you fall in love with me, what have you. But that's how sales work. will you buy this project? No. Why? It's too expensive. Well, what do you mean it's too expensive? Well, you want $10,000 for it. Well, is that too much for your budget? Yes. Well, what is your budget? $6,000. So are you telling me you'd buy this project for $6,000? Now I got to figure out, can I sell it to you for $6,000? I probably can with a couple. That's how it works. If I can get rid of the negative, if I can get rid of the reason you're not going to buy, would you now buy? You've got to say yes.
Yeah. You make the opportunity so attractive that they have to say yes to it. Yeah, exactly. You said that, you were an idiot for doing something. Well, I have to say to you, Peter, you are from, if anything, you are a pioneer in many things that you do. So I appreciate that. If you were to tell one person, especially a young person today, and we're getting some feedback, so I'll try to, but if you were to tell one young person today, what is one skill they need to master, could be the skill that will transfer through their entire career and their life and their business, regardless of what they do, what would that one skill be?
Never lie, cheat, or steal ever for any reason under absolutely no circumstances. Because you can't remember a lie. You cannot remember a lie. You can't tell a lie backwards, you see.
Yeah, exactly. Very good. And
so whatever your business is, and it could be in sales, it could be in books, it could be in selling your podcast, it could be in magazines and media, all the things that I do, trying to raise money, trying to get people to donate money. But if they know that whatever you're saying, it's absolutely the truth, they'll trust you. And when people trust you, they'll do business with you.
Absolutely. Well, and I think your credibility is all you have at the end of the day. You can lose your business. You can have multiple failures. You can do whatever happens in business and life. But at the end of the day, you have two things. You have your credibility and you have your network. And without those two, you have nothing.
Correct. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I'm going to close off the show. I appreciate everything, but I always close the show off with one question. And that question is, if you were to give your younger self one piece of advice, what would that be?
How young? How young would I be?
Like 18 years old.
18 years old. I'd have to go beyond that, before that. I would say somehow early in your life, you need to be in the teenage years, reasonably close to 20. You're going to have a number of different career paths, but they all could be in the same industry. I'm fortunate. My entire career has been in the media business, whether it's radio, television, magazines, newspapers, speaking, whatever it is. You need to decide reasonably quickly what it is you're good at, or what is it you could be good at, or what interests you. Those three things. And then pursue that path. Not everything's going to work. You're going to have to change direction sometimes. You're going to have to move career paths. But if you're honest and truthful in everything you do, find something that suits your personality, suits the gifts that you've got, get the education in that particular industry that you feel you want to go into, and pursue it for the long haul. Pursue it for the long haul. You're going to change career paths, but I've been in media all my life, whether it's radio, television, magazines, what have you. So find out what is it you want to do. Can you do it? Can you make enough money at it? Save 10% of everything you earn, period, starting from day one, and don't look back.
Wow, that's some really good advice. What really is, I think, really exceptional. You save 10% of everything that you do forever. I think kids today, John Lester, who wrote Think and Grow Rich for Women and is a good personal friend of mine, and he's an advocate for financial literacy. And I think that's a missing component in people's, especially in young people's lives right now. And 10% of everything you do is absolutely what I wish somebody would have told me when I was younger.
Did you say Think and Grow Rich? Napoleon Hill's book, Think and Grow Rich.
Yeah.
That, even today, is probably the #1 selling self-help book in the world. You can get it virtually at any bookstore. If you don't have Napoleon Hill's book or any of his books, if you don't have that book, Think and Grow Rich, today, right after this podcast, go and find that book and get a yellow pen and read it every chapter. It is full of wisdom, and you will be a multimillionaire, and you'll be successful beyond your wildest dreams if you just do what he says you should do.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you very much, Peter, for joining me today. I do have one other hi, and that's from Jim Cathcart. And Jim told me to tell you to say hi.
Oh, thank you. He's one great speaker is Jim Cathcart.
Yes.
When I was at his round table, he was there between he and Fripp. They encouraged me into it and get with all the other speakers, and love him very much.
Yeah.
I don't see him as often as I used to, but I love him lots.
Well, he's phenomenal. And him and I are actually writing a book together right now.
Writing a book?
We're writing a book together.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. So you never know, I might have to knock on your door for the publishing side of things.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Peter. I appreciate you and all your wisdom, and stay healthy in these times. And I look forward to personally seeing you very soon. Maybe at the cap out.
Maybe. Thank you.
Bye for now.
Bye-bye.